Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cozy Corner Chronicles. I'm Julia,
And I'm Liz.
and we have an extremely special guest today on our podcast. So, will our special guest please introduce herself today?
Hi, I'm Grace K. Shim. I'm a young adult author of The No Family and Not Your Average Joe.
Yay. So, Grace, will you
Yay.
please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, if for anybody who's read my books, some of background's going to sound a little familiar. I write a lot from my own experiences. I'm a Korean American born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Moved to California for high school, where I went to boarding school, and then I had a series of jobs and professions not related to writing, and I found writing later in life. My first book debuted 2022 and I was in I'm in my 40s. So let's just say it was a very late stage career for me.
What inspired you to start writing and how did you get started?
So this sounds very cliche, but I did have one of those moments where I woke up and I was like, I have this idea, it was like a bug that bit me. And I felt like I could do this. I could actually make this into a book. It's going to be so great. It's going to be amazing. And I fired up my laptop that hadn't been used in like, I don't know, 5, 10 years. And it was one of those situations where you had to keep it plugged in or else it would die to the battery, So I had no idea how to write a book. And I literally just started writing the thoughts in my head. I was like, I think this is how a book sounds, And I went through it and I wrote it, and I will never open it again and read it because I'm very mortified by what I thought writing a book would be like. And it was a series of trial and error for me. But honestly, when I look back, because now I have time to reflect on it, because I started writing like 2016. At that point in my life, the years that I've had, that was the point in my life where I had become a full-time stay-at-home mom. And I had 3 kids that were each 2 years apart. At that point, I had just had my third. So I had 3 kids under 5. And so it was a lot. And at the time, I wished motherhood could be enough for me. I wished it was enough for me because I literally put my everything else on hold to be a stay-at-home mom. And it was a conscientious choice that we made as a family.
Right.
And I remember feeling deep regret. I wish this could be it for me and I'd be very happy. But I did feel like something was missing from my life and I wanted more.
Right.
Looking back, writing had always been a part of my life. I had always excelled in high school and college, but one of those things, especially from Asian American families or Asian families, where it's not a career option. It's just like an asset to a career, but not a career in itself. So of course I never thought about those things and until I had nothing, and I said, what do I have to lose? I am self-taught. So it was a lot of self-motivation in finding the resources, going to seminars, being part of SCBWI, like there were so many little baby steps I had to take along the way, but I eventually got here.
I think that's something that we talked about often too, even prior
Yes.
to AAPI month, with our career choices and dealing with our families and, what is right and what is wrong. Because I think for us, especially in my family, like it was go to college because we were never able to, and make something of yourself. And that something was either be a doctor or be a lawyer. And that was it. There was nothing in between.
Yeah,
I totally get it.
that's very common. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say too. Is like, I think it's funny that you mentioned that because I was literally about to say the same thing, where we had literally just made a podcast episode about this and like our backgrounds, and how literally when we went to Baylor together and we became science majors, it was all because our family was like, yeah, you're going to have to be some kind of doctor. I don't know if it's medical or pharmacy or dental, whatever it is, like you're going to have to be a doctor. So we were like, okay, yeah, I guess that's the route we're going to go. Now
So
we're
are you a doctor?
no, that's what I was gonna say. Now, of course, we're not doctors, but
Okay.
but yeah, I do. That's what I was like. I do work in the healthcare field, but
Okay.
not a doctor. To my parents' disappointment.
Yes, and then I'm trying to go to dental school.
Okay. That's
Mhm.
cool. I'm sure your parents are very happy. And
I'm
I
sure.
wished it was in my DNA, but I would just like mess so many people's teeth up if I did that. But I like to think I come from an atypical, my parents are not the traditional Korean Asian, tiger parents, but they still lived in this box that they can't get out of. And so whatever you do, it has to be a professional career. And I enjoyed writing. So I had every intent to use that in my career. And when I graduated college, I graduated as an advertising major with the idea that I wanted to do copywriting. When you graduate as an advertising major, not a linear path to it. So for advertising, you're either on the creative side or the account management side. The account management, you're just like in ad sales, basically. And that's something I did not want to do. And it's more corporate and business structured. The creative side requires you to go to art school. And that was also not in my realm. So I just strictly wanted to do copywriting. So then I founded my first career in television production. And I was like, this is so cool because I love TV shows. I love all the story. I really gravitated to it, the storylines that were well-written shows, you know, and worked on the set of 2 hit television shows. And I was an assistant to a producer because you either start out as a PA, production assistant, or assistant to a producer, sitting there. And I'm like, this is supposed to be like a dream job. I'm literally working with actors, actresses on the sets, going to locations. And I sucked at my job so hardcore. I suck. I should not be anyone's assistant. I shouldn't do admin work at all. Like, it was terrible. And I just felt like, what is wrong with me? Why did I think I wanted to work here? And I can now look back and go, okay, it was all there, but I just couldn't. I had to bury under all this repressed stuff. But I do love a good story. And a lot of authors will say, oh, I was that shy kid with my nose in the book. I was not an avid reader when I was little, but I was really drawn into really good storytelling. And it didn't matter how it was told. If it was a book, a movie, a play, musicals, TV shows, like those are things that really pulled me back into the writing world, is the stories people tell.
So it sounds like you did kind of have like a knack for arts in general, whether it was something like movie, film related, just you didn't know it was going to be writing and being an author till later on when you had that kind of epiphany, right?
Yeah, no one's at career day going, be an author. Like that's just not something I've ever seen.
Very true. So how long did it take you to write The No Family and Not Your Average Joe? I was actually curious about that.
I love talking about this because it just like doesn't matter like what order you have this in at all, because it will just come out when it comes. Not Your Average Joe was actually a book that I started writing in 2018. Got into this mentorship program called Pitch Wars. I don't know if you're familiar with it because it doesn't exist anymore. I think it got shut down last year, but it was probably one of the better known mentorship programs. Like you apply with a manuscript to published author in your genre, and it usually draws a pretty big crowd. So mentor was Jessie Q Sutanto.
Yes, I read that in your
I don't know. Yeah. I was like, I don't know if you know Jessie, but so when I was her mentee, she was writing you submit to 4 authors, 4 mentors, read through all of the applicants, and they choose the one that they want to work with. And I think they work with them from September or October to February. You work with your mentor, and in February is the agent showcase, and agents participate in this. And so these are big agents too. Yeah. And this is sort of the biggest mentorship program out there. So I was like, I got 4 out of 4 requests from my mentors. 2 warred for me. So Jessie and another author were like fighting for me, and they had to pitch themselves to me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so lucky. Like, this could be a hit. I'm so excited. Oh my God. It was like dollar signs, like all this. Yeah. And it was amazing. Jessie and I hit it off right off the bat. She and I have very similar writing styles. Her personality is so bubbly and contagious and infectious, and we just hit it off. So it was great match. We worked really well together, and she helped me to see some spots, holes in my novel, and really not be afraid of tackling revisions. But then the agent showcase came, and I got 24 requests from agents, which is pretty decent, but I got 0 offers. And it was like so depressing because it was February 2020. The few months that followed, it was like just shut down. Everything was shut down. And I just felt like, what agent is reading right now? So I just felt like all the dreams go down the. So it was really sad. I probably gave up on it around May. I had probably amassed about 100 rejections, and I was like, I can't do anymore. This is like hurting me to send this out. And so I had such high hopes for this, and it didn't go anywhere. My sister took a DNA test and got her results. She's like, I'm bored. It's pandemic. There's nothing to do. So she took this DNA test, and she's like, you know what's really weird? It says we're related to these really random people that I've never heard of, and they live right here in the US. And then they happened to reach out to my sister and said, how are we related? So unraveling that was the precipice of the No Family. Anyways, if you're counting, Not Your Average Joe came out in 2024. I started writing in 2018. That one I snuck in as a 2-book deal. So that one, it took like 6 years to make. The No Family, after my sister got that DNA test in April, we figured everything out. I wrote that book in 3 months. And I got an agent.
Wow.
I wrote it in 3 months, revised it in a month, and then I got an agent like almost right away. And then that book came out soon after.
That's crazy.
So
that's amazing.
So you just never know what's gonna go first or be a bigger hit.
Right.
And honestly, I thought the No Family was so funny. Like, I used to watch K-dramas religiously when I was especially in middle school. So when you were referencing Lee Min-ho and like every single K-drama that he was in, I was texting my friend Tina and I was like, you got to read this book just because Lee Min-ho is mentioned, because she was obsessed with Lee Min-ho, just like every other teenage girl, every other middle schooler who was like watching K-dramas at that point.
He's so pretty. I don't know about his acting, but he's really pretty.
And he is.
Look at him.
Besides like your own life experience with, your sister getting the DNA test, was there a K-drama that you kind of based the No Family off of at all?
Yeah. And I just love to hear that you said that you watched K-dramas in middle school. Cause like when I was in middle school, I watched K-dramas with my mom, like, in the VCRs that she would get like weekly in the videos, and then put it in our VCR and we watch it. And it was like a shameful secret, not a shameful secret, but it was like a double life that I was living. Cause like none of my friends knew what the heck that was. I felt I just had a double life. You know what I mean? Like nobody knew Korean dramas and stuff. So, and I don't even think there was subtitles. I think I was like, what'd she say? Like, my mom was like the translator in my ear. I just felt very not embarrassed, but almost ashamed by it. It was not something that I was like willing to tell people.
Right.
So it makes me like feel like, wow, K-dramas came a long way. Like writing about it, I felt it was like cathartic. I can finally just talk about the things. And to this day, I don't actually watch it. And not like Chloe, who's like obsessed with K-dramas. I know a lot of people are. My sister and my mom are always telling me, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this. But it was pandemic and I literally was running out of stuff to watch. So I ended up watching Hospital Playlist.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that. I really like multi cast, like a big cast.
Right.
Like the Reply series, I love those too because it's just a big cast of characters. I just feel like it just brings so much depth. So anyways, I was watching that show and I really liked it. It's kind of like the Korean Grey's Anatomy. That's how I describe it to people. And like, I don't know, what is there, 16 episodes in a season? I can't remember.
Probably. It's always some variation of 16.
Something like that. There's a set number. My sister would know the answer right away, but like I'm not as knowledgeable as her. It really struck me. I was like, okay, like it's either 3 or 4 of the episodes were about liver. I was like, what is this liver, transplant issue? There's so much drama around it. And I was like, okay, there's something here. Like, and obviously Koreans love to drink. It's a part of their social culture. It's part of business culture. It's like something you do and you can't refuse it and blah, blah, blah. So I get it. I get why the liver issue is a big deal there. And then there was this one episode where it was this rich family, the Chebor family, and they were like hiding the person that was giving their donor, because like family members can donate. But they said the son was donating part of his liver to his father, but they were very guarded about, don't come into the room, don't leave him alone, blah, blah, blah. And they were VIP. So of course all the staff were listening to them, but like it turned out they had hired someone posed as their son to be the liver donor because they didn't actually want to put their son in that situation. So it just was like, why don't we bring in this one person? And all of a sudden they're interested in her because of her liver. And the whole reason why I was really against writing this story, but like as we unfolded who these people were to us, it's not like a scandalous story. It was just my grandfather helped an infertile couple. And so the relatives are actually closer to me and my sister's age than my dad's age, even though they're half siblings, if that makes sense.
Right.
So it was like much later in life, and Korean's very patriarchal, and it's like they wanted a son, and they wanted a smart son, and like my dad had gone to like the top university, and he's a vetted son, so they're like, oh, this guy can, and ironically they had 2 girls. I was like, they had 2 girls. But the girls were smart, and they did go to the same college.
Oh,
so I don't know. There's
love
something
it.
there, but I
It
think,
worked.
and I don't. Yeah, it's some half of it worked. Let's just say half of it. There were no like. It was very early in the technology, and there was no contracts that you signed about not seeing each other or
Right.
disclosing information or whatever
Wow.
relationships that were
Mhm.
had. And so we actually Skyped with them. We've met them several times. They're super nice. We have a
Yeah.
relationship with them now, and it was like very Korean drama. And I was just like,
Yes.
what's gonna happen here? Like,
Listen.
there was nothing bad, but like
Right.
as this was all unfolding, my sister kept saying to me, like, you have to write this story. It's like way too much like a Korean drama. So like that
Yes.
was the inspiration for Chloe, where art imitated life, and it was like everything that's happening to me is just like what I see in the dramas. This is crazy, So that's kind of where the little pinprick idea came from.
Honestly,
love it.
that is a whole K drama. And even reading the No Family, I was
Literally.
like, this is a K drama. I was like, this is great.
So kind of just
That's how I
tagging
felt
on
in real
that.
life too.
How does your cultural background and your influence, all of that, how does that influence your writing, particularly your themes and your characters and your settings?
I loved your questions, by the way, because I feel like it's a lot of what I'm grappling with now. I had a lot of internalized racism growing up because I just was in a community that was very, very white. And so I always think about how, I reread Pachinko recently, and I love it so much. But just to like be in their heads and understand how they felt internalized racism for being Korean and how they wanted to be Japanese. Like, I mean, it's just the product of your environment. I was deeply, deeply repressed in that because there's no one to talk to either. It was a big reason why I asked to move to boarding school, because I was like, I just need to be around more people like me. So when I first started writing, actually, I was a part of another mentorship program called AMA, Author Mentor Match, which also is no longer, I don't know what's going on. I had a different manuscript for that. And the first book that I told you that I woke up and I was like, I want to write this story. It's going to be amazing. Those 2 books had an all white cast. And I think the best thing that I did was I made their ethnicity ambiguous, because I was so scared to write about a character that looked like me. Not scared. I think what it was is that I wanted to write a book, and this is how I know books to be like.
Right.
So I was emulating what I saw, right? When I have as much as I can, when I talk about how much representation matters, I'm like, this is what happens to someone who doesn't see themselves in books. They think it's not possible. And so here I am trying to write books, and I'm like, no, I can't write a character that looks like me, because that's not what I see on the shelf. Like, that's literally what's going to happen to these kids if they don't see themselves on the shelves, or represented in other areas too, obviously. But it wasn't until I went to a writing retreat. The largest children's agency is called Andrea Brown Literary Agency, and they hold 2 writing workshops, one in the West a year, one in the West Coast and one on the East Coast. And I went to the one at Big Sur, and one of the agents there asked me about my book. She was talking about how, don't culturally appropriate someone else's culture. And I was like, oh wait, I'm writing about white characters. That's not really me either. So I go, well, what about that? And she's just kind of explaining to me, and she was a white lady, so I think she was trying to be very careful about what to say. But I really credit her for opening my eyes, because she said, not the same the other way around, because this is the dominant norm of our society. So this is what everybody's taught. It's not that, it's the other way, where the dominant norm, which is white America, like taking a minority's point of view, marginalized person's point of view. And so then I told her a little bit about my background. I said, well, it's because for a large part of my childhood, I thought I was white. And I told her that story, and she just kind of like looked at me. She's like, that's an interesting story that I'd like to hear more about. And so that kind of put the idea, people want to hear about a story about a girl who's racially confused, like culturally confused and divided, and then goes to a boarding school in California and has a cultural awakening. Okay, so then that's why I started writing Not Your Average Show. at that time too, there was not that many Asian American authors, but I'm a part of this writing group called Kim Chingus, and we're all Koreans diaspora. And we all started our writing journey at the same time. We all were in the AMA mentorship program at different seasons. So we weren't really on the same cycle, but we just got connected that way. And we were like trying to be writers. And I remember it was great because we were encouraging each other, but at the same time, we are like, what are the chances that we're all going to make it? Because for Asian American or Asian authors, it really ramped up in the past couple of years, like 5 years, I want to say, like so many more. Like this year, particularly for API month, I'm like, look at all these book recs that are not mine. It is what it is. I'm so happy, but I'm like, wow, things have changed. So the landscape has changed quite a bit. But when I was first starting out, I was like, well, who wants this? So I went from all white cast to having a book with an all Asian cast set in Korea. I was really floored by that. It was like a 180. Sadly, it was during the time of the pandemic where the rise of Asian hate crimes are happening. So it was a lot of things going on in the world and in publishing. And so I think I was grateful for the opportunity, but I was very, very wary about this cover is too Asian. This cast is too Asian. The description is too Asian. You're only comparing me to other Asian authors. Like there was so much along the way that I was like, there's no individuality, I am not that kind of Asian author. Because like my upbringing is so different. Even like sharing my story with the Kim Chingus, they're like, I don't get that because they didn't have the same internalized racism feelings that I did. So, like just to know that there's so much diversity within diversity, that was really, it's very hard for me to navigate. So I think at this point going forward, writing my own books, I still really only comfortable writing things that personally happened to me. And I think that's why there's so much of me in my books, because I don't feel qualified to, and not that anyone expects a person to do it, but sometimes the public does put that pressure on you to speak on behalf of an entire community. And I feel that pressure and I don't want to get hated on. So I feel only qualified to write about my own experiences and then have the questions surrounding my identity and things that I struggle with. Because I think that's the only thing I could speak with authority, my own thoughts.
And I think that's so important too, because a lot of the times there are, Asian American authors or just Asian authors in general who also internalize those things, who won't write because they've never seen like that kind of book on a shelf or have never experienced that kind of book. And even in general, there are a lot of Asian Americans who have a hard time, coming to terms with the fact that they are Asian. Or like, I remember even growing up for me, like feeling the need to hide the kinds of foods I eat or, not sharing my cultural experiences because it was weird. Like to me, it was weird. And like you, I grew up in it was Black or Hispanic. So when everyone kind of asked me like, oh, what are you? Like, are you Hispanic? Or, you look Hawaiian. You never said no, but I never said yes. I kept it racially ambiguous, I like to say, because I wasn't okay with being Asian at that time. Or, I didn't come to terms with the fact that I was Asian. It was just a hard thing. So I'm glad that you're sharing your experiences and writing these books, because I think it does help a lot of other Asian Americans and Asian authors, or even just Asians and Asian Americans in general, to come to terms with different things.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And I think now that you've shared your story and how much of it is actually very personal, I can even more appreciate Not Your Average Joe, because what you said and all those sentiments really reflected through. And I think something that really stuck with me when I was reading it through is like the experiences that Liz and I had talked about. Like I grew up, honestly, I was really lucky in like an all Chinese community. So my experiences were different from Liz's. But whenever you had said in the book, like Riley didn't feel Asian enough for the Asians, she didn't feel American enough for the Americans. And sometimes, like that just, it reflects on how it's kind of like being an Asian American. Like when your parents grew up in a different country and then they come over, the sentiments are different. So I also really liked your acknowledgement. I actually recently made a TikTok about Not Your Average Joe because I really like the acknowledgements too, where you said you started the book because you wanted to stick it to like the American media industry, because just like in Not Your Average, you're right, you don't really see many Asian lead singers. And at the end of the book, when you had mentioned 88 Rising, I was like, I know this is the right crowd, because I'm obsessed with like all of them producers in 88 Rising. So I was like, okay, this is it for me. So kind of mentioning the fact about American media and everything, How do you think, like, what kind of main challenges did you actually face as an Asian American writer in the publishing industry, and how have you kind of overcome that?
I think there's like Asian bias is so hard. Like something that's shocking that I found out about Asian hate crimes is that a lot of them are unfounded, only speculation, because it's a very hard thing to prove, right? Unless you have someone overhearing or kept or like, testifying that they've heard the person specifically say something racist, it's unfounded,
Right.
unfortunately. So a lot of these suspicions will always linger without ever knowing whether or
Right.
not it's there or not. So I will say that I have been treated to my face very respectfully.
Mhm.
But I'm always going to wonder, you have too many Asian books to promote this month, so you're gonna pick your top, which one's gonna sell the most, and then promote those two only.
Right.
I get
Yeah.
very, very, very wary when there's another Korean American book releasing the same month as me, and there happened to be at my own publishing, my imprint. So it's one of those terrible things where it's almost like you feel, and a lot of people will talk about this within the minority subgroups. It's like you feel you're pitted against each other,
Right.
because you feel like there's not enough space for all of
Right.
you, and when they have to pick and choose, you see them as competition. And so it's an unfortunate thing. What happened to me twice, actually, my first time and my second time. It's like something that you're thinking about. I can never bring it up
Right.
to my publisher or my agent. And even if I did, there's nothing that can be done because it's a business at the end of the day, and they have to operate in the way that they feel have its most successful outcome. I do think that it was one of the most discouraging things I heard, and it wasn't said in a very mean way, but I think one of the things I wanted for Not Your Average Joe was for it to be marketed very differently. So I hate to be pigeonholed. I mean, I'm very much like Riley. I just don't want to live up to your expectations of what what you think I should be.
Right.
And so that's why I
Right.
don't want to write the No Family, because I'm like, everybody wants a Korean author to write a K-drama book, everybody, and I'm like, and there's so many that were K-drama inspired, but whatever, like that came out that year that I did. I really don't want to be a trend, and I didn't
Right.
want to write to the trend, and I didn't want to be seen as an author that did that. And I'm a person that can really only write from an authentic place. And I'm not saying that because I'm like I'm an artiste, but like I literally can't manufacture it. Like I wish I could be a little bit more outside of the box, but like a lot of what I write has to really come from a place that I believe in, or else you'll be able to tell right away on the page that I
Right.
don't believe in it. And so I think that was what was really hard for me. So I wrote the No Family just because it was very personal to
Right.
me. And then it got, of course, marketed in a very, very trend that's out of my control. And that's kind of what you sign up for when you go traditionally publishing. I'm not, like printing these books. I'm not distributing them. I'm not selling them. So that's what I signed up for. So sometimes you just have to sit back. To be honest, I didn't love the cover because that animation I felt like was a little cartoony, very Korean specific way of drawing cartoons.
Oh,
And
is
I
it?
remember seeing that when I was in Korea. That's how they draw people, and all the little details of the face and stuff. Like it was really sad. I went to a bookstore, I couldn't find it, and they put it in middle grade because they were like, oh, it looks younger than it should be. Or other people saying it looks like a webtoon, and I'm just like, I was kind of sad. I did try to change it. I think what I appreciated about my publisher is that they were really, really, they really wanted to be very intentional with the artists that they used, which I appreciated. So even though it wasn't my favorite cover choice, I really appreciated that they chose an artist from Korea to do it. The only thing that I thought was a negative to that was that it's not going to appeal to the American crowd though. Like, if she's looking at it from a Korean lens. Yeah. And then my second one, I thought he nailed the cover. I loved it so much.
Yes.
And unfortunately the process was, it was hard. It was hard because it went through so many changes. And what was really sad was that they loved the pitch of the story. And then when I wrote it, I was like, okay. I rewrote it 3 times, like from top to bottom, 3 times for them. So I just felt like it was a struggle to reach the finish line, that I think in the process, there was a little bit of faith from the publishers that just dwindled. They were like, oh, it's taking too long. So they just like didn't give it the push that I got with the first one. And so that was unfortunate because I actually feel like this one could do well, but people just don't know about it. And I think a lot of people could really, especially young readers, could understand compassion and empathy and all those things, even if they're not Asian American. So I was trying to get into the school and library route because I thought maybe this would be great in classrooms and educators. And so it might not be in bookstores, but teachers and educators might know it. And the saddest thing I heard was, oh, but school and libraries tend to shy away from books about racism. So I was like, oh my God, this is so sad.
Yeah.
Because I'm literally writing it for the kids, like I really want them to have a takeaway. So I've already spent 2 years, 3 drafts writing this, and now you're telling me that there's no market for it, basically. So it almost felt doomed to begin with. So there were some missteps along the way that I felt like maybe had I known, I could have been a better advocate for myself. Still very proud of the book, but I feel like the reach, it's just like for the handful of readers that are reading it that might appreciate it.
Yeah.
All I can do is just hope that I'm just gonna keep writing and hope that people will rediscover it or discover it later. Anyways, just not having the marketing push because of its topic it's just not encouraging. Yeah, it was discouraging.
Right, especially when you know what kind of target audience you wanted and the message you wanted to get across, and then not having that be available to them. That's definitely hard.
Yeah, and kind of touching back on what you said too, I'm actually a teacher, and there are teacher right now, hopefully doctor later. But in our libraries, it's really hard to get certain books just even in the library itself, just because of funding in general. But there's a specific book that I have been pushing to get in, which is called Eyes That Kiss the Corners. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, Joanna Hope.
Yes. Yeah. We've put in the request multiple times. They don't ever, look at those requests or even think about it because they'd rather get books like Dog Man or like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or like, things like that.
I'm
All that to say.
surprised
All
because that
that
one
to
is
say,
award winning. It's won all sorts of awards.
yeah, I have it in my classroom and I always welcome the kids to come and get it from my classroom. And I have 3 copies of it for that reason. But even in my school, like it's just me and there's a little boy in 2nd grade that's Asian, just us 2. And so like I could understand why, they wouldn't want a book like that, but I still feel like it's important to include it as just diversity in general.
I was just gonna say, yeah, those schools probably need it more, if anything.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, bummer. That's a bummer to hear.
Aside from that, what other themes and messages do you hope that readers would take away from your work?
I do always want to leave them with, because it's a young age still, an impressionable age. I always want to present characters that have a flawed outlook things and just because that's how all of us are. I mean, especially me. I had to learn a lot of things the hard way. Like I couldn't just learn it from someone telling me, don't do that because you're going to get hurt. Like I have to go through the process and get hurt to understand what that meant. I do hope that there is something that readers can always take away from it. I do try to show empathy and compassion in ways that I think are very not shoving it down your throat, but just like in ways that I hope maybe be like a subtle takeaway. Because I feel like when you're too preachy, kids are more resistant to it. I do think that I have talked a lot about identity in my first 2 books. So I do have a 3rd book that's not coming out till 2026, early 2026. So it's not for a while. It's going to be less about their cult. Well, there's never not going to be cultural stuff in there.
Right.
Sorry, not sorry, I guess. But then not as a central theme. So I think about my kids because they're teenagers now, and I think about like they don't. Not that they don't want to read about it, but they need books that reflect them, which is not having immigrant parents. So being fully Asian American, I'm going to try to start going that direction too, because I think that's the reality is that there's so many that don't have immigrant parents and they didn't grow up with that. So I think one of the parents in Not Your Average Joe is from Arkansas, Riley, and that was a little bit emulated from like me. You know, I grew up
Mhm.
in a small town in the Midwest.
I
Played
think
more of that.
and now that you mentioned that, that is a good point. Like I didn't even think about it that way because like Liz and I, we still had immigrant parents, but by the time we're parents, if we are parents or like now that people are growing up too, you're right. Not everyone's going to have the same experience of having immigrant parents. So I
Mhm.
think that brings up a very good point. And now I'm kind of thinking about like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that because now we're just growing up in like a different generation. And so the
Yeah.
experiences are just going to be different for everyone now. And so books, I can see how you would say that it probably needs to go in a different direction, kind of trying to relate more to your kids and stuff like that too as well.
Not Your Average Show was based on sort of my experience going to boarding school and all that stuff. I actually had to ask like a college aged kid person from Arkansas, Asian American from, is it still like this? Like,
Right.
you know, because I don't know. I had to fact check. I was like, that was decades ago. I don't know if
If
it's still like
it,
a, the sad, it was like sad and not sad at the same time, but it's still like that. So it was kind of weird. I'm like, it did make me think, is this ever going to change? Is it
right,
ever going to be
right,
different? Are we always going to feel like this? Like, anyways,
right.
it was one of those weird things.
Right. And I think as we're all still growing up, I think it's the representation stuff is of course like a little better, but I think we just sadly live in a world where things like that will probably still continue on regardless. Like there's always going to be part of that in the world, but at least with more awareness, hopefully in the future it can be
Mhm.
just like even a tiny bit better.
Yeah, I know. And that was kind of also what I wanted to explore with Not Your Average Joe with the music industry, because I do think that the entertainment industry is still one of the largest unchecked industries in terms of being PC. I mean, I think TV, like the visual media, has definitely had a lot more to contend with
Right.
because of its visual representation in terms of characters that they play. So there's a lot of more movement towards authenticity, but with music, it kind of, it's still heavily veiled. You don't know what happens and how people make it. And I think
Right.
one of the
Mhm.
things that really made me think about it was, you know, Taylor Swift is the biggest, like arguably the biggest pop star of today.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, little girls are all looking up to her thinking, I want to, you know, I want to be her when I grow up. And that is a
Mhm.
reality. And it doesn't matter how talented you are. It's only a reality for white girls, you
Yeah.
know? And I think I just wanted to show that that didn't happen on its own. Yes, she is very talented, but like there are so many talented people and motivated people, but the doors will just not open for,
Exactly.
some of us. And these are external factors that we have no, you know, control over, and the industry has these big gatekeepers that just won't let you in, and I just don't think that there's a lot of awareness behind that. So I don't know, I hope to bring some awareness. I didn't want to attack an industry, but that was not my intention, and I certainly didn't want Taylor Swift to get me heat because I knew that would backfire on me big time. But it was just like sad, you know. I have a daughter. We, a lot of the girls are like taught to believe you could be anything you want, and I'm like,
Mhm.
well, if you
Can
are a
you?
certain type of person, you can be
Yeah.
anything you
Can you
want.
really?
Yeah. So
Exactly.
it's just a lot of layers behind that.
And I
Yeah,
think, and I
for
honestly
sure.
think your book did a great job of doing that. Like when I was reading it, because I don't know too much about the music industry either at all. But when I was reading it, I was like, you know what? Like this is the reality. Especially when even when you were talking about how when like saw Riley and was like, oh, we don't do K-pop. I was like, like we're not even Korean, either of us, and still
Yeah.
people would be like, do you listen to K-pop? And we're like,
Yeah.
no, we
Yes,
don't.
every time. Or like,
I
and it's
actually
like,
don't like BTS either.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not to say I don't like them, but I just don't listen to them. But I've had random people DM me and be like, talking about K-dramas and BTS. And I'm like,
it's not
I'm
who you
Korean. That's about
are.
it. That's just,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the one thing you have in common
It's
is
so
that you're
weird.
yeah, I've actually more recently run into a lot more people who don't understand that Asian is an umbrella term because it's either you're Asian or you're Chinese. That's all like
Yeah.
that people know. Like, oh, you're Asian, but I thought you were Chinese. Like, I'm like, I don't think people understand like the different countries and like the different places. It's not just Asia. You have South Asian. You like, there's so many
You have
more.
East Asian, yeah.
There's so much more to it, and people don't. They're I don't want to say they're ignorant, but in a sense, it's going to be like super controversial, but.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I
I mean,
agree.
I agree. Like, yeah, I think we all can agree. It's just the struggle of growing up Asian American and having different experiences. But at the end of the day, like, we do what we can to hopefully raise awareness, but also still be comfortable in our own identities and growing up in
Mm-hmm.
different communities, of
Mm-hmm.
course.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you've touched on this quite a bit. Like, how do you navigate like the balance between, you know, your own experiences and creating stories to make sure they resonate with wider audience? I know a lot of it you said is drawing from your own experiences and then hoping that your messages can be passed on in a way that's authentic to you. How do you kind of have that process of navigating that exactly?
I do think it's hard. It's a hard balance that I actually have to be conscientious about because I there's a part of me that feels like I when I write towards a trend, although I think it is smart that you do that. You just have to see what the landscape is to give yourself a better idea of like what kind of stories are gonna sell
Right.
because honestly it is a business and you do have to sell your
Mhm.
books. It's not a
Mhm.
steady income. There's no guarantee of a next one. It's just how, it's just how the business works. So you do have to have some savviness, but I do feel like that's my biggest challenge is not feeling like I'm not selling out, but like trying to write towards trying to guess what this moving target wants
Right.
is not very productive for me because then I end up writing something that feels forced. I do read a lot. I just go based on what my feelings are about this would make a good book, because I'm a reader now too, an avid reader, and when I see a good storyline, it sparks more creativity, and I love that. So I'll read books that will often kind of guide me as to what my tastes kind of like move with it. So I hope that that is something that I can help me balance my own perspective that I want to tell, and then kind of story that would be accepted by a wider audience, and therefore a publisher would want to buy it.
Right.
Are there any specific authors or other literary works, like you were just mentioning, that have really inspired and influenced your writing in general?
I've just been on an adult reading binge, so that's why most of my recs right now are for adults. But I will say the inspiration for me, in writing in general, like the first time I ever saw someone like myself on the page, and it was a huge influence to me, was Emergency Contact by Mary H.K.
Oh,
Choi,
that's
and
on
this
my
one's set in Texas. Did you guys read it?
that's on my reading list. I
It's
literally
I
have it in my
haven't read
cart.
it yet.
I loved it. Okay. And I just like her she's like a dry humor type of,
Mm.
sarcastic. And I do highly recommend the audio book because
Okay.
the two narrators do a really great job. This is my favorite book of hers. Yolk is still her most well-known one, but I think this is my favorite. And I loved it so much that when I was trying to sell the No Family, I pitched it to the same editor,
Yeah.
who also edited Jenny Han's books, To All the Boys,
Really? Ooh.
and she's my editor too. So it was like an editor goal of mine. So anyway, she ended up becoming my editor, and I was like fangirling over her in the first call. But it was okay. So yeah, we fangirl a lot in the industry. But this one was the reason why I really liked this one so much was because she's a Korean American with a very non-typical. This was the first time I saw non-typical, like not tiger mom. I didn't have tiger parents either, so like a lot of my stories will not have parents that are like Ivy League,
Mhm.
Patty, classical music, like that kind of stuff. But that was all I saw too. And I was just like, okay, is there a different kind of narrative that we can
Right.
start passing around now? I really like this because she has a single mom who's kind of a hot mess, and she's like the responsible one. It just was like so American, but also unapologetically Asian.
Yeah.
And she's the main character, and he's like this hot white dude, like I was like, whoa, this is really different. I mean, this is more real life than any of the other books that I read, but yet there
Mhm.
isn't any book like this. So I remember when I first read that, I was like, this is amazing. She's inspiring me. I'm going to go right. I haven't been able to navigate it as well as her because I think she does a better job of just writing the story, and then the cultural inferences is back there. I think for me, because cultural identity is a very big topic in the first two books, it was more that I really want to like start shifting to stories that
Yeah.
have Asian American leads, but aren't about being Asian American. It was a huge inspiration to the young adult author, just telling myself, I can do this. I can. I've seen it. I can do it. So this was another book that I mentioned, Dial A. When I read it, I just loved the way she wrote her culture
Yeah.
in authentic, but like,
Yes. It was so funny.
it's comical. I'm not South Asian. I'm East Asian, but it was very all relatable. We all have aunties that are too meddling, things like that. So it was very, very relatable, and I appreciate the way she blends humor into it. So that's something that has been inspiring for me as well. And I recently read both of Angie Kim's book, Miracle Creek and Happiness Falls. And
Ooh.
I love them. If you like a good mystery, she's also really great at talking about culture, but not talking about like it's it's
Right.
there,
Like
but it's not the central theme. They're mystery books, and it
Okay.
starts off with very intrigue. It's just so complex and very, very smart. I highly, highly recommend that.
yeah, I think we will definitely add that because we were looking for a good murder mystery, but we went with Dial A for Aunties. Literally, that's the book we just read for the podcast.
Yeah, we just
And
Oh,
finished
that's
it.
so funny.
yes, we just finished it and we were cracking up. Like we instantly fell
Yeah,
in love with
she's
her
so
writing
good.
style. We were talking about Yolk as well because actually what got us was the cover and how on the binding of it, like the hands are still holding and stuff, and that's what we
Yeah,
kind of
I
got
know.
the attention of. But now that you say emergency contact is even better too, I have that sitting in my
Well,
cart.
that's me.
Yeah.
Like I'm always a little bit different than the average reader. So like that I prefer that one. It's a slow burn romance that is I just root for her. Whatever. I loved it. But and it was very believable characters. People love Yolk though because there's so much about mental health, and it's just a little bit more that encompassing that area. Anyways, and Happiness Falls, they are murder mysteries,
Right.
but it's a little bit more intense murder mystery. You're like,
Okay.
what happened? It's not like comical or
Right.
anything like that.
Well, perfect,
But yeah.
because now we have murder mysteries that we can now read, which I will definitely be adding to my TBR. My like thousands of books already
Yeah.
on there, but
I
I will
know.
Yes.
definitely add that. But I guess like our last question of the day, I think this is a good one to end with too, is like what advice do you have that you want to give to aspiring Asian American writers who are also looking now to navigate into the literary world?
I was thinking about this because I've been out of that world, like where you're trying to get an agent, for a while and starting out. So I'm not really sure what resources there are. Actually, We Need Diverse Books has mentorship programs. What was really helpful for me, and I do think that there are two things that are essential. Like, well, first you have to start writing. I mean, even if you
Yeah.
have like this crazy imposter syndrome, if you have this inkling, there is like nothing to lose by writing. At the very least, it's cathartic. It's therapeutic. You do it, you feel good, you feel accomplished, you got it out. You write for yourself, like at the very least. If you are striving to achieve the traditionally published route, which is the only thing I can really speak to, do you think it's important that you find a critique group? You do need some feedback. I think there is a time when you get to a point in your career where you don't rely on people's feedbacks, but even now I still have beta readers, and I think that they're essential to seeing plot holes and helping you figure out what's working, what's not working. So I think you have to get involved, and that you can either find online. I don't actually know what resources are, but all except for SCBWI, which is the Society of Children's Writers and Illustrators. So it's only for young adult and younger. I don't know what's out there for adults. So unfortunately, this is for young adult and younger age groups. But it was really essential in getting plugged into the community for me. Also, like they have like these meetups locally. They have big convention that they do annually, and it's just great to hear professionals talk about what you need, how to get their craft, publishing industry, and it's just overall baseline helpful. And then the second thing would be to do a mentorship program. Once you have enough chops to write a full manuscript, to be traditionally published, you need a full manuscript, your first one at least. After you have your first book deal, you can sell things on proposal, and you could still probably find a way to sell things on proposal, but you'll need a full to get an agent. So you do need a full manuscript. So once you have enough chops to write a full manuscript, I would enter. I mean, you can just go from there and query agents if you want. I think if you're starting out new, you could also apply to mentorship programs. And I think We Need Diverse Books has one, but I'm sure if you looked online, there would be several. And the great thing about these are that they're free.
Mhm.
They're by other agented authors who have a wealth of their own personal experience in the industry. Not to mention the editorial vision. They know how to look at a book and the structure and things like that. So I think those are the two things that were really crucial for me to learning, because this was like my fifth career. I don't even, I lost count. I wasn't about to go back to school at my age and, do all of that. So it was really what got me to the place I needed to get get an agent and then get a book deal. Because once you get an agent, that's your first mile marker. That's your first industry gateway you need to get through. Once you get that, then your agent will help you significantly with vision, whether or not it's big or small edits. They'll help you get your manuscript into shape somewhat. But in order to get there, you do need some help along the way. So those are some free-ish resources out there for you.
Yay. I'm glad that you spoke to that, because we honestly cannot give any insight onto how things are published. So we're glad that someone can. But I like that you mentioned, that you're going to need some help along the way. So I hope that people who listen to this also, and any aspiring author, takes away that, like, you don't have to do things alone. I think it's okay to have a good support system, and also be able to navigate a world that's a little more difficult for Asian Americans, Asians in general. So yay. I'm glad that you were able to give good advice for that.
Yes.
But Liz, do you have anything else like that you want to ask, or anything left to add?
I don't think so. I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. We are so thankful and so appreciative, because I know it takes time out of your day. It's also a Sunday. Like, people do nothing on Sundays, and we also like to do nothing. So, but we are so appreciative, and just being able to come on and share your story, and opening our eyes to just all the things that you have experienced just as an author, and going through your writing journey and all of that. It was so nice to hear, and I'm sure everybody else is going to be really interested to hear as well.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yay. And with that being said too, everyone go read Not Your Average Joe, especially because it is a fantastic book. Like I said, I made a TikTok about it already, but please go read it. It definitely has like deeper themes than just a young adult who's trying to make it in the music industry. It touches on so much more than that. So please support Grace. She is amazing. So with that being said, thank you once again, Grace. And we hope that everything in the future, is, of course, with the new book, goes well. And we will definitely be buying it, pre-ordering it, all of that good stuff. So thank you so much once again, Grace.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Thanks for having me. And yeah, like I said, I enjoy podcasts so much. So this is a fun way to spend a Sunday.
Yay. I'm glad. Thank you, guys.